Thank you, Dee. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. For those who don't know me, I'm John Abbott, and I want to welcome you all to day 2 of the very first online Cardinus Connect Summit. Now, for those of you who don't know, Cardinus have been hosting customer conferences for many years, and they've always been so well attended with delegates from around the world. Now, I have to admit that knowing how busy everyone is in our industry, I was somewhat skeptical about moving the event online this year. But in hindsight, I really needn't have worried. Our attendance figures over the last 2 days are absolutely incredible. And it's so exciting to be sharing this event with you all. Now, Cardinus events are about you, about our partners, our customers, and our friends. Between us, we have so much knowledge and experience. And I truly believe we can achieve so much more through our sharing of this knowledge and skills. So to that end, I'd really encourage you to participate in the sessions today. Every speaker is keen to hear your voice, to answer your questions, and to understand your point of view. Each session will have a chat facility. And for those of you who do know me, you'll know that there really is no such thing as a silly question. So please don't be afraid to join in. We really do want to understand your perspective on the subjects we're discussing today. Now, the focus of this summit is how will you meet the challenge of a changing world? And let's face it, we've been talking for years now about how quickly our workplaces are changing. However, I don't think any of us were ready for the speed of change we had to endure last year. We really, truly had to think on our feet. But the question remains, are we ready for the challenges that are yet to present themselves? Now to me, it seems pretty clear. We're suddenly facing a number of new, perhaps unknown risks, and probably for the first time for many of us, we've got little control over our colleagues' working environments. We're finding ourselves having to make decisions about the future before we have any practitioner or academic research advising us on how we should proceed. And so that's really the purpose of this summit. It's to help us to all share ideas so that collectively and individually we can all determine the best pathway forward. Now, yesterday we had some truly fantastic speakers. Harry Bliss of Champion Health considered mechanisms for building an effective results-driven wellness strategy. Pamela Galately of Healthcare RM looked at the broader issues associated with home working. And that was things like not just your physical and your psychosocial risks, but things like data security, privacy concerns as well. It was a really enjoyable session. Sally Roth of the law firm DAC Beechcroft looked at the legal issues of really whatever our future workplace is going to look like. Now, these sessions were all recorded. So if you do want to go back and watch any of these sessions at your leisure, you can do so. If you haven't been sent a link to see those pre-recorded sessions, the previously recorded sessions already, you will receive one. And if you don't, just reach out to anybody at Cardinus and we can make sure we get those links to you. Now, today's speakers are equally impressive. 2 of my colleagues from Marsh are joining us, and Jeff will be looking at flexible working considerations as we begin to emerge from lockdown, while Sue Denicky will discuss how virtual healthcare providers can help us reduce the risk of MSKs by being able to deliver effective services remotely rather than needing to be on site. Later in the day, we have wonderful sessions by Crystal Bauer about managing a work-life balance. And my friends Vanessa Curtis and Julia Jensen of the University of California will consider hoteling shared and hybrid environments. Now, in amongst our speakers, you're going to have plenty of time to consider your own well-being too. We've got short sessions running to teach you breathing, meditation, and yogitation techniques. I sat in a few of these sessions yesterday and I had some phenomenal feedback from delegates. So if you have the time, if you have the opportunity, I'd absolutely recommend you join some of these short sessions. I really believe you'll get a lot of value from them. Now, you will have pre-booked your sessions already. So at the right time, simply click the link to access the session that you will receive in an email. It's important to know that each session is unique and you will have a unique email and link for that session. If you want to change or join new sessions, it's really not a problem. Just visit the main Connect Summit link and you can change or book as many sessions as you want to. Now, I think you've probably already heard enough from me, so I'm going to pass you into the hands of our experts. But before I do so, and to launch today's sessions, I am utterly delighted to introduce our keynote speaker, LaQuandra of Wells Fargo. Now, LaQuandra is a senior risk consultant in risk and insurance management. She manages Wells Fargo's enterprise ergonomics program. And along with all the daily tasks associated with such a mammoth task, she also handles safety and health concerns such as OSHA complaints, workplace safety and hazard identification, and importantly manages to juggle all of this responsibility while being a mom to no less than 5 children. LaQuandra, it's an absolute pleasure to introduce you. The stage is yours.
Thank you, John. What a great introduction. Hello, everyone. It is a pleasure to be with you today and to discuss, I guess, a hot topic at this point on the return to office. I want to take you back and I want you to think back to maybe March 11th of 2020. If you can't think of that day, think of the last day you were in the office. What did that day look like? I'll tell you. I usually work from home on Wednesdays, but on that day, I went into the office specifically to buy tickets to an upcoming concert. I wanted to walk to the arena to get the tickets so I didn't have to pay the ridiculous fees for purchasing them online. And something said, they're talking about this COVID stuff. This could get bad really quick. Maybe I'll wait until tomorrow to buy the tickets. And that's what I did. Packed up my stuff, I went home, and that was the last time I was in the office, not knowing that we would be out of the office a year and a half later. I just thought, like most people, I'm going home. It'll be for a couple weeks until we figure this out. And then it kind of grew from there. We went to maybe a couple months to, I don't know when we're going back. So let's look at the time frame, and I can at least tell you this time frame from us in the US. So in March of last year, we started seeing those stay-at-home orders, meaning we couldn't go anywhere except for essential places like to medical appointments, to take care of relatives, or to get essential products such as food. Then we moved into our mask mandate in June, where you had to wear a mask in public. In September and August, children started going back to school. So what would that look like? That's when we were introduced not only to working from home, but remote learning. So many of us went from juggling just being at home and working to being at home, working, being a principal, being a teacher, being an administrative person, a cafeteria worker, all in our day. But we adjusted. And the winter came and we were hearing about the second wave. It's going to be even worse. At this point, going back into the office just was not in sight until talks of the vaccine being available started happening. Fast forward to January, the vaccine is here. We started getting those vaccines, and that's probably the first time since we went out of the office in March that companies really started thinking about what will the return to office look like and how will we start to accomplish that. There are some standard considerations when we talk about going into the office that we are going to take a look at. Of course, social distancing. That's going to be number one. How do we enact social distancing? Do we still need social distancing? What will that look like for us? We found out that social distancing has become a natural part of what we do and how we conduct ourselves in public, and it actually became something we liked. I can tell you, I like not being and being in the grocery store and not having someone breathing down my neck as I'm in the checkout line. I like that. I like the idea that you have to stand a few feet back from me. I like it. And I don't want it to go away. I think that we should just be a little distant, stay out of my personal space. And we're finding out more and more as we're talking to our employees with returning to work that that is something that they find comforting now to have that space, and not even in regards to COVID, but just germs in general. This will be really great when flu season comes back around again. So when you're looking at that, make that determination and maybe discuss if it's worth still continuing the social distancing. Again, not necessarily from that COVID aspect, but just from a general comfort factor. The second consideration is cleaning and sanitation. How often will you clean? What will be available for the sanitation and cleaning? So, will you have disinfectant wipes available? Will there be a spray? What will that look like? I can tell you now, when you walk into a building, there's going to be hand sanitizer at any entrance or exit. There's usually hand sanitizer by the elevators and throughout every floor. Will that continue, or will we start to step back those protocols? So, those are some items that most companies are looking at to determine what's feasible and what they need to discontinue. I can tell you, as far as Wells Fargo, we used to do multiple cleanings throughout the day. And now we've kind of taken a step back and said, okay, once a day is good enough. So we've gone from continuously doing them from anywhere from 3 to 4 times a day to doing them once a day right now. So that may be something that you consider as well with going back. And then workstations. The workstations can be, those considerations are going to be a lot. How many workstations do we need? Are we going to continue this kind of flexible scheduling so we won't have everyone in the building at the same time? So, can we operate with less workstations? How far should they be apart? What equipment will we include at those workstations? So, these are things that we're looking at to figure out what will be the best combination when we return into the office. So these three things are kind of common. These are the things that we're looking at and most companies are looking at and trying to figure out what's going to work best for them. However, there are a few things that we have discovered with the idea of returning to the office that we hadn't even considered. We didn't know that they were going to be a concern, but in talking to our employees and networking with our peers and really just watching some of the trends, we've learned that there are some things that we have to take into consideration for the return to office that aren't going to be what we initially thought we'd be dealing with. So it's time for us to think outside of the box when it comes to the return to office. The first thing to keep in mind is the stress and anxiety level that most people are feeling when it comes to the return to office. Let's start with our introverts. Quarantine was introvert heaven. They didn't have to deal with anyone. They could stay in their own space. They didn't have to exert a lot of energy with even being face to face with people, a lot of meetings, a lot of contact. My husband's an introvert and he loved it. He absolutely loved not having to exert so much energy. And so at this point, we have to look at that type of personality coming back into the office and be conscious of how we approach the return to office and that we don't overload them with too much of, hi, it's so good to see you, and running and talking and hugging and meetings and let's get together, because that could be an overload for them. There's going to be some anxiety about being around people in general again. There, there are employees, there are people that have enjoyed the quarantine or have gotten used to not being around people. They may live alone. And so just coming in with contact with people constantly is going to be overstimulation. It's going to be a lot of concerns around germs, around COVID, but just in general, acclimating back to being around a lot of people every day. If you think about it, we never thought about it. We had never had a time in our life where we were not around a lot of people. We went to school. In school, you had a classroom, you had people there, and as you transitioned into the workplace, you worked on the floor, you worked on a team, you had people around. So we've never really had a chance to be by ourselves and then come back around people. So that anxiety level is going to be extremely high. And then there's going to be the stress of getting into a new routine. I have gotten up, took a shower, put on sweats and tights and t-shirts, got in front of my computer and started working. And then I maybe take a break about mid-morning, go fix myself breakfast, come back and keep working. Now I have to get up, I have to get dressed, I have to get the kids dressed, I have to make drop-offs at school, I have to drive to work, I have to park, I have to walk to my building, I have to take the elevator up to my floor before I even log in for the day. That routine is going to be very different from what you've been used to for the past year and can cause some stress and anxiety because it's going to take a while to get back into the hang of things. Think about when you go on vacation or on holiday and you're gone for a week or maybe two, and how hard it is to get back into the groove of things when you come back. Imagine that now being a year. You have not had that routine, and you can imagine how long it's going to take to get into that routine. So that's what we're looking at when it comes to the stress and anxiety level of our employees. The second thing is going to be health concerns. There are going to be people, of course, that are just going to have the general concern of, I don't want to get COVID. I don't want to come to work, and I don't want to get COVID from someone that I work with. On the same hand, it could be that I don't want to come to work, get COVID, and bring it back to my children, or I could be a caregiver. I don't want to bring that home and make my parents or whomever I'm caring for sick. So there's the concern there that just coming back into the office could cause some type of illness, especially COVID. And the last would be the concerns of those that may have a compromised immune system. So people that may be recovering from certain types of treatment, maybe regarding cancer, coming back into the office and maybe they have a vaccine or not, but just having some concerns on how to keep themselves safe as they're coming back around other people. The next one is going to be new responsibilities. Not everything in COVID was bad. Not everything in quarantine was horrible. There are a lot of new responsibilities that were taken on by some employees. One could be a new pet. You're in quarantine, you needed somebody to talk to, right? So a lot of people decided that was a good time to adopt a pet. Now, this pet has never been without their owner for a long period of time. And how do we go about getting that pet used to not being around their owner all day? Same token, maybe you had a baby or you expanded your family in some form or fashion during COVID. What does that look like now with the limited availability of childcare, with just some anxiety of separation anxiety? How does that going to affect the family dynamic? And then lastly, because of COVID or other issues, maybe you became a caregiver. And maybe now you have your parents living with you or other relatives that you're caring for. What does that look like now? How do you perform your normal activities? How do you provide care when you have to go back into the office? And the last concern that we're seeing is new physical safety concerns. And this is something that probably isn't new, but there's so much going on right now, especially in the US, that people are concerned about their safety. When we're talking about that, we're talking about unruly people. Like we're seeing all of the reports of people on airplanes that are just livid and out of control when they're asked to wear a mask. So people, I thought when we came out of quarantine, we would be a lot nicer, and we're not. Some people are just a little different now that we are out. And that has been a concern because they're scared of for their safety in regards to how people will act. The second is civil unrest. There are some areas of the US that are experiencing some protests, especially after George Floyd. There has been a lot of demonstrations, and that causes concern because a lot of these buildings are in some of the more populated areas in the metropolitan areas where these protests take place. And so, as they're occurring, people are concerned to go into the office. And the last concern around physical safety is workplace violence. And as we're seeing more and more, we're seeing a lot of mass shootings. So now people are concerned about going into the office because I was safe and sound at home, but how will you keep me safe in the building? So we're going to take a look at each one of these and discuss some of the solutions that we're starting to explore and things that we're looking at to address them as we're going back to work. Stress and anxiety. We have found that offering some type of employee assistance counseling or program helps so that employees can start to now talk to counselors and get some information about their anxiety, help manage that, learn how to manage their stress. That is proving to be very helpful with getting them acclimated to the thought of going back into the office. We are looking at a staggered or phased approach to back in the office. Again, we talked about those introverts that may not need everyone bombarding them at one time. So maybe we bring them back in phases. So one department comes in this month, then we'll add another department. It could be that, you know what, this week you work one day, and then you'll work one day for the first month, and then we'll add 2 days the second month. Whatever that looks like, it may be very beneficial to add in a very flexible return to office schedule instead of everybody's back in on September 18th. Everybody come on in. Even from a standpoint of infrastructure, it may be worth it to consider some type of phased approach so that you can work out the kinks as more and more people come into the office. Individual space. This will be good if you have some folks that are, again, dealing with this type of anxiety, to have some type of space where they can go and kind of close off and be to themselves. This would be especially needed in an area or a design where you have more like flexible or hotel cube style seating. So you kind of first come, first serve. Having that space where they can go and be to themselves, like a computer or a telephone booth or a room, just where they can go, take a few moments, gather their thoughts, or if there's overstimulation, they can go until they kind of relax a little bit. In that same space, having some outdoor activities and options will be great. So we're looking at what can we do to make the outdoor space that we have at our facilities attractive and usable. So that could be just adding more benches so that if someone feels the need to step away, they have somewhere to sit outside, whether they want to talk to someone else and discuss their feelings, sit by themselves, read a book, they have those options. It could also be that you set up some fun yard games like giant tic-tac-toe or horseshoes or bocce ball, just somewhere where they can step outside, relieve some stress, have a little bit of fun, and not necessarily have to worry about the constraints of being inside the building. Commuter options will be another thing to consider when we're talking about the return to office, because we have some employees that don't want to take public transportation anymore. And with not wanting to take that, what will that look like for us? Will we add additional parking? Will we add maybe a subsidy to help folks with parking? Because maybe people that used to take public transportation have decided that they're going to drive and provide their own transportation every day. So we'll have an increase of vehicles at our facility. What will that look like? So kind of being flexible with some of the commuter options that we have will be beneficial. And then the last thing is going to be to promote wellness programs. And this will be programs that will be centered around Again, managing stress and anxiety. We have a wonderful program with our wellness group that helps with meditation. And I was so glad to see the next session, the yogatation. That sounds amazing because, of course, being an ergonomics professional, I love the idea of stretching throughout the day, but also need that time to meditate. And that will be a great addition to the wellness programs, is really just focusing on, again, a chance to manage some of that stress, focus, and to have that time throughout the day to relax and to refocus our energy. So that's what we're looking at when it comes to stress and anxiety. When we're talking about just some of the general health concerns that people are displaying and talking to us, we found it necessary to have a transparent plan. We want to talk about that return to work, and we want to make it as transparent and clear as we possibly can. Make sure that they know exactly what's going to happen. When you walk through the door, you're going to see this is going to happen, this is what your day is going to look like, this is what's available at your facility. And that helps reduce some of the concerns a lot of times because they'll know exactly what to expect and what will be available to them. Have a method for them to ask questions is important. Just sending an email blast with a no reply mailbox is not going to be the most effective. But having somewhere where they can go if they have questions or concerns, again, as early as possible when we're talking about the return to office, will help with managing some of their expectations and a way for them to get some of their issues addressed ahead of time. What we found, and this is more so in my church, what we found was really helpful was to have a mask only section. And this isn't necessarily if you want to wear a mask, you don't, but there are some people that are just more comfortable with everyone around them having on a mask. And if you decide that that's not what we're going to do, maybe consider a mask only section so that everyone that sits in this particular part has to wear a mask. Or if you feel more comfortable wearing a mask and you want everyone else to wear a mask, we've dedicated floor number 4 to everyone, and that's a mask only. You have to wear your mask on that floor. And again, like I said, we're piloting this at my church, and this is very popular because there are some people that just want to wear a mask, and whether they're vaccinated or not, we're not even going to get into that discussion. But they just feel more comfortable, and they're more comfortable with other people wearing masks around them, and that has become very soothing for those that have that concern. So they feel like they are having their need met, but can still attend the services. And then the last thing that we are discovering and trying to figure out the best way to do is to have an escalation process for those that have some of the high risk health conditions. So again, if someone has a concern or has a compromised immune system, they have a way of bringing that to light and let someone address that issue. So it could be that there's a one-off and they have to do a different process, but they need a way to say, hello, I have a concern, this is my concern, and how can I get this addressed? Especially for those that are high risk, it is so good to get ahead of this and start now. With everything that we're talking about, the quicker you start this, the better it'll be. So if you're going back to work, let's say September 8th, and you say, this is what we're doing, and you tell them on September 3rd, the reaction is going to be negative because it seems like a lot too fast, not enough time to absorb or prepare. So the time for preparing for a return to office is definitely now. We talked about those people with the new responsibilities. So things that we found that are helpful that we're exploring would be daycare benefits, maybe adult daycare for those that are caregivers, pet care benefits. We're even exploring some of the training options for pets. So how do you teach them or start crating them during the day while you're home so you may decide to crate them while you are away. We found that is something that we're exploring and could address some of these. And then again, offering those flexible work schedules will probably be a good option as well. So I doubt that we'll go back to just 100% everyone at home, 100% everyone in the office. I think most companies are looking at, from what we've talked to, most companies are looking at a hybrid option. And so having those flex work schedules will help a lot of folks that are having these new responsibilities. And then last, as we talked about, were those safety concerns. People want to feel safe when they are at work. And that is the most important thing that we can convey to our employees, is that we're doing everything we possibly can to make sure that our facilities are safe for everyone that is on site. And so what we started to doing is assessing our location security. What does it look like? Of course, during the pandemic, a lot of locations had to decrease their security staff. So now, as we're starting to return to the office, it's time to look at beefing up our security again. And do we have them rotate? Do we have them walk the floors a little bit more? Do we add more people to the outside of the premises? What will that look like? So now is the time to start looking at the security that may be needed for that location. Again, offering that flexible schedule, and not in the sense of I work from home 2 days a week, or I work from home 3 days a week, but if there is something that has occurred or will be occurring, and you feel like it's not safe for me to come into the building, that there is a plan that will be in place to allow people to be more flexible and work at home until whatever threat has been resolved. And then the last is testing that emergency contact system, being able to get a message out to everyone in that location in a timely manner is going to be critical, especially when you're talking about some of the issues around maybe workplace violence, so active shooter or anything of that sort. You need to be able to get the word out quick so that people can know what to do and they can get out of harm's way. So those are the things that we look at around physical safety. Like I said, we have taken some time and we've looked at these the return to office in a much broader perspective. At first, when we first started thinking about this, let's say last fall, we had those three considerations. We knew about the workstations. We knew that we were going to have to look at social distancing, cleaning, and sanitation. But the more we started talking to our peers, the more we started talking to our employees, we quickly realized that this was going to be much bigger than what we thought about before. And there were going to be new challenges that we've never faced when we were talking about actually being in the office. And so what I encourage you to do today is to take a step back and look at your return to office through different lenses. Look at everything that people are facing, not even from a physical aspect, but just from a psychological aspect as well, and try to incorporate some of these changes into your return to the office plan. With that, I would like to thank you for your time today. We're going to go ahead and I'm going to take a look in the Q&A box to see if we have any questions that we need to address. Okay, so if you have a question, I don't see anything now, and you guys keep me honest if anything pops up. I want to make sure that we have time to go through those. So if you have questions, feel free to put those in the Q&A box. We're not monitoring the chat, so if you have those questions, put those in the Q&A box, and we'll be happy to answer those for you.
Hey, LaQuandra, I have a question for you, just from the cardinist perspective. I've heard a couple of clients that have asked about sign-up sheets. In other words, as you talked about people taking public transportation, some people may be leery of those people coming in because they're taking public transportation and increase their exposure. Are sign-up sheets allowed? In other words, being able to see who's coming in the office that day?
Yes, yes. So we have looked at that as well. We will be tracking who is in the building, in each of the locations. And one thing that we have been talking about, Bill, is tracking how they got there. whether it be that you took public transportation or you drove yourself. So I think those are some things to look at and to start exploring. But we will allow some type of tracking just from the perspective of COVID and knowing who you may have come in contact with. We will allow that.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a question that asks, how do you handle employee questions about building ventilation? Is this something dealt with? Absolutely. We've gotten a lot of questions about our buildings that we didn't even know people paid attention to half of the things in there. And so what we have done for the return to office is we have created a intranet page for our employees. And every question that we come up with or we are asked, we've put those questions into this web page, and it's kind of like frequently asked questions, and we've divided it into maybe ergonomics, building. So we have put this question out there. So when we talk about the building ventilation, we have a kind of blanket statement that we tell them that our ventilation is up to code and that there isn't anything concerned there. However, when it comes in directly to us, we go specifically to that building and we will give them the specs of the ventilation system for their particular building. So for us, we have over 1,000 locations in the US, so we don't necessarily we can't get detail with each one, but we will take the moment for that particular question to give them the specs on the ventilation in their particular building. Because again, transparency is going to be everything. So we want to make sure that they do know about what is happening in their building and the type of ventilation that is used. How have your colleagues taken on board the ideas and the approach you are taking? So how we, I guess, collected some of the ideas and how we discussed in the approach. So that's a very good question. What we've done is we have done a few roundtable discussions, one with some of our peers. So we work closely with a lot of different vendors and a lot of different banks within our industry. And so we just kind of had a couple of roundtables and discussions to say, this is what we're thinking about and what are you guys looking at? And what are you hearing? What questions are you getting? So that's how we collected some of the questions and concerns from our peers. For our employees, we have had a few sessions around working from home and the return to office. And we present information and we just pretty much say, what questions do you have? What concerns do you have? And we've been doing these sessions since June of last year. And so what we've done is kind of built a database of the questions that are coming in, the concerns that are coming in, and that's how we've started building our approach to the return to office. And the return to office is not just our risk and insurance management department. It's also, we've pulled in our corporate properties group, we've pulled in our wellness group, we've pulled in HR. So it's a discussion among multiple lines of businesses on how to best handle it. And I love that approach because we don't have to be specialists in every area. We can pull in those subject matter experts and really dive into the topics and the concerns while also getting a fresh perspective from someone that may not deal with it every day. So I think that's a great approach to take. Don't just put it in one area, pull in all your resources, all of your internal partners, and see what will be the best approach when you're looking at the return to office. Okay, I think those are all the questions that I see in the chat or in the Q&A box. I would like to thank everyone for your time today and look forward to seeing you in some of the other sessions later on throughout the day today. Have a wonderful day and we'll see you soon.